All right. Why do I still have MJ over LeBron all time? So first of all, for those of you guys who don't know, and I've said this a million times on the show, I am a big LeBron fan. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. We don't have an NBA team here. The Suns did not do a good job marketing down to the Tucson area. So like most basketball fans coming out of Tucson, I'm a fan of players, really. And LeBron is a very important player to me growing up because I grew up in a house that was primarily focused on baseball and football. My little brother and both my brothers played college football. And my little brother was a great baseball player as well. That was just kind of what we were focused on, right? And then one day I happened to find LeBron James on television, and that's how I fell in love with the game of basketball, and it literally changed my life. So I have a sentimental attachment to LeBron James, and my thing is like I think it's better that I just tell you guys that and be honest about the way that could potentially color my analysis, and then just try like hell to fight against it as much as possible. That's the funny thing in all of it is LeBron fans hate me, and those of you guys who follow me on Twitter know this because like I am critical of LeBron when he goes through stretches where he doesn't play to where he's capable of. I am critical of LeBron when he makes mistakes, just like I am with any other star. I talk about LeBron's career, the good and the bad, instead of just spewing propaganda like so many of his fans do. And so that approach really pisses off LeBron fans. And so a lot of LeBron fans don't like me, which is the kind of funny irony in all of that. But, you know, honestly, like I tend to think that everybody's biased. I think that anybody who tells you they're not biased is lying. I think everybody beyond sports and anything has a worldview, and your worldview colors the way that you see situations, right? But it goes even further with basketball, like or anything in sports. Any of the most prestigious analysts in all the sports, baseball, football, basketball, they all, even if they're good at hiding it, they have a certain view of the game, and that colors the way that they evaluate players and teams. And so I don't really understand the point of trying to hide that. We all have our biases. I think it's better to kind of admit them and try to fight them as best as possible and be kind of forthright about it than it is to try to pretend like you're this arbiter of truth in the wild where everyone else has takes and opinions and you're just only resonating in fact. I just don't think that person really exists. And so I tend to just lean into telling you guys exactly how I feel about stuff and letting you guys judge it from there. You know what I mean? Now, I have MJ over LeBron all time because of the simple fact that while both players did dominate their peers, MJ dominated his peers to a greater extent, a significantly greater extent than LeBron James did. Comparing across eras is difficult. I've talked about this with you guys before. I talked about it with Magic and Steph yesterday. Like, I actually think Steph is a better basketball player than Magic Johnson was by some small amount. I actually think LeBron is a better basketball player than MJ was by some small amount. But the reality is I think basketball players are constantly getting better by a small amount every single year. I don't think it's fair to hold Magic and MJ to the same standard as LeBron James and Steph Curry, given the information and the technology that's available to them now. The difference in how comfortable travel is for them in the planes that they take, the difference in the medical knowledge that's available to them now, the difference in just the way that we approach a season in terms of taking care of our bodies, the shot selection and understanding the analytical approach and how they can boost shot value, and all that data just wasn't really available to Magic and MJ in their era. And so I don't think it's fair to compare that across eras. Same thing goes to the future. I don't think it's fair to compare LeBron and Steph apples to apples with players 20 years from now. It's going to be even more different when we get to that point. And so really, to me, the best way to evaluate a player is to look at the way that player performed relative to his peers in his era, and then stack that up with the way other players in other eras competed against their peers and what they accomplished in their era. Here's the reality. MJ won 6 championships in 8 years. No player in the history of basketball has dominated the league the way he did during the 90s. He was so much better than everybody that it was insulting to even throw another name in the conversation alongside Michael Jordan. That's how much better he was than everybody. It was Michael Jordan on the top tier of stars, a gap, and then everyone else. Now, LeBron had a brief stretch like that. I'd argue in like 2012, 2013, 2014, that little 2-3 year window, LeBron was unassailably the best player in the world, and there's clearly a gap between him and everyone else. But that gap closed. Guys like Kevin Durant and Steph Curry caught up with him, and then eventually Kawhi Leonard as well. And now I personally think LeBron was definitely the best player in the league from 2012 to 2020. In that 9-year span, I thought he was the best. But That 2014, 2015 to 2020 stretch, it was close. You weren't saying LeBron was in a tier by himself. It was LeBron, Steph, KD. You know, LeBron, Steph, KD, Kawhi. LeBron, Steph, KD, Kawhi, Giannis. Whatever you wanted to look at there. He was on the same level as those guys, but probably a little bit better. It was a different level of dominance compared to what MJ did in the 90s. Just imagine, just pretend for a second, like Nikola Jokic won the title again next year and won Finals MVP, and then did it again, and then did it 3 of the following 5 years. We literally wouldn't know how to handle it. We'd probably be proclaiming him the GOAT before he even got to his 4th title, because we don't see that anymore. We don't see that level of dominance. There is no player that has risen above the other players the way that MJ did in the 90s. We haven't even seen a three-peat since the Lakers in the early 2000s. So, like, again, that level of dominance, I think gets glossed over a lot in these debates. It's not just 6 titles to 4. It's 6 titles in 8 years. It's unassailable. There's nobody that could even remotely consider themselves on the same plane of existence as MJ over a decade. That's what sets him apart in terms of dominance, in my opinion. Now, can LeBron pass him? Yes. But I think he needs one more championship as a star-level player. So let's take a quick look at the resumes before we go any further. So Finals MVPs, MJ 6, LeBron 4. MVPs, MJ 5, LeBron 4. First team All-NBAs, MJ 10, LeBron 13. Total All-NBAs, MJ 11, LeBron 19. All defense selections, MJ 9, LeBron 6. MJ won a Defensive Player of the Year award in 1988. LeBron never did. MJ has 10 scoring titles, but LeBron James is the NBA's all-time leading scorer. Now, to be clear, the longevity argument for LeBron is a strong argument. Like 19 All-NBA selections compared to 11 for MJ, that's a substantial gap. That's more than 70% more All-NBA quality seasons than MJ had. And then being the all-time leading scorer, that's a legitimate argument. Putting the ball in the basket more than anybody in NBA history, and then also doing that in the postseason, that's a legit feather in his cap. I've also always said that LeBron has a variety argument. Those of you guys who have been following the show for a while have heard me say this before, but like he led a Larry Hughes, Drew Gooden, Zydrunas Ilgauskas team to the NBA Finals. Then he won 60 games twice with that Mo Williams, Delonte West, Antoine Jamison group, right? Then he wins 2 titles and makes 4 finals with the Miami Heat. Then he makes 3 finals and wins a title with Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving. Then Kyrie Irving gets traded and he leads them to the finals without Kyrie Irving with a completely different backcourt, right? Then he wins a championship with Anthony Davis and a group of role players in 2020, and he just made a conference finals with a completely different group of role players alongside him and Anthony Davis. There is an argument, like we've also heard the phrase like Swiss Army knife thrown around with LeBron. And it's true. He has a ton of variety in his game. He's a super versatile player that can fill a bunch of different roles. Like he's operating as a major screen and roll threat right now for the Lakers. That was never anything that he did significantly earlier in his career. Like he has a versatility to him that allows him to functionally change his role in any basketball team. That's a significant feather in his cap. Like if I had to make a GOAT case for LeBron, this is what I would say. If you're in a vacuum starting a franchise and you can draft one player, arguably you'd want LeBron because you get more cracks at the table, right? 19 All-NBA quality seasons versus 11, and more versatility in what kinds of teams he can win with, as opposed to the MJ mold where it's like basically 2 different archetypes of teams, right? Like the Horace Grant Bulls and then the Dennis Rodman Bulls. But the gist of it, though, is still triangle offense, MJ and Scottie, Phil Jackson is the coach, right? So there's a lot of similarities between those 2 eras, too. But again, that doesn't undercut the dominance. But if you had to make a case for LeBron, that's what you'd say. Like you're starting this team from scratch. You want the guy who has more great seasons and the guy that's capable of playing different ways because your franchise is going to change over the course of that existence. That's how I would make the case. But guess what? Basketball games don't take place in a vacuum. And you guys have heard me say this before. This is why I do my player rankings the way that I do. I don't think it's fair to undercut an accomplishment from another player based on hypotheticals and to hand accomplishments to another player based on hypotheticals. That's not why we play the games. We play the games so that we have a trophy. We play the games for the trophy, for tangible results. And we can argue about plumbers, and we can argue about how much talent was on the Bulls, and we can argue about dilution of talent with the league expanding in the 90s, and we can say whatever we want. We can talk about Steph Curry and Kevin Durant teaming up. We could talk about all those things. But the reality is MJ three-peated twice and won 6 titles in 8 years. And LeBron won 4, which is really freaking good. Second best player of all time. There are 2 players in NBA history with 4 championships and 4 finals MVPs. It's LeBron and MJ. He deserves to be number 2. And that longevity case is legit, and it makes up some of that gap. But in my opinion, not enough to make up for the utter dominance that MJ showed in the 90s. Now, if LeBron gets a 5th, let's say they win the title this coming season, and he averages 27, 8, and 8 during the regular season and 26, 9, and 8 during the playoffs, and he hoists the trophy. Now I'm like, I got a 5th title, and I have all that longevity stuff. Now I think that gives LeBron the edge. And if LeBron wins another title as a 5th, I will personally view him as the greatest basketball player of all time. But I do think that we've greatly overlooked what was an incredibly dominant stretch of basketball by MJ in the 90s. Yes, there's propaganda. Yes, Nike has pushed a bunch of stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of guys in the media that push MJ propaganda. You're absolutely right. And I push back on a lot of that stuff. The whole, he would have won in 95, but he was in baseball shape. No, bullshit. Bullshit. Sorry. Like, he lost. He lost in 95. I'm there with you guys. I push back on the propaganda too, but 6 and 8 is 6 and 8. And that has to mean something. In a league where the Larry O.B. is the whole reason why we do this, he won 6 of them in 8 years. Again, I'd encourage you just to think about what you would do. Who's your favorite player? Is your favorite player Giannis? Is your favorite player Jokic? Is your favorite player Steph? Now imagine if, let's just use Giannis and Jokic as an example because they're actually young enough. Let's imagine that Jokic wins again next year and the following year, and then wins 3 of the next 5. What if Giannis won 5 of the next 7 championships? How would you Giannis fans be talking about him? How would you Jokic fans be talking about him? I do think that it's almost like the further we've gotten away from that accomplishment, it's like blurry or something, and people can't really see what it is. It's freaking insane. He 3-peated twice. It's unbelievable, and so I'm not in the business of trying to downplay that accomplishment.